Hey everyone, I'm Todd Casey. Welcome. Today I'm in the studio with Camie Salaz. Did I say that right?
Yes.
All right, good. And we're going to talk shop, so let's start. Camie, welcome.
Thank you.
Thanks for having me in your studio. I guess it should be the other way around. Thanks for welcoming me into your studio. So we know each other obviously from Water Street. That's where the story begins. I'll give a little bit of backstory of how I know you, and then we'll go into your story. I applied to get into Water Street. I'd emailed Jacob, and Jacob said, show me your cast drawing. And then I said, what the heck is a cast drawing? And he was like, go to the Grand Central Atelier or Academy. I can't remember what it was called at the time. And go do a cast drawing, come back and show me what you got. And that's where we met. He said I could either do Saturdays with Nick Hiltner or Monday through Friday, I think, with you.
Yeah.
And I think it was 6:30 to 9:30 or something like that.
Yep.
And I was like, well, they were the same price, me being super cheap. I was like, I'll take the five nights of GCA and you helped me get into Water Street. So that's how we know each other. Why don't we start a little bit further back with how did you end up at Water Street?
Okay. So I've always wanted to be an artist ever since I was a little girl. And so I went to college for art at Cornish College of the Art in Seattle, Washington. And it was during that time that I discovered there was this divide in the art world between classical art and modern art. And I was interested in creating artworks of people and telling stories of people. And I wished for the people to look like people. And so I felt I fell into the classical realm, but there weren't any classes in the college that taught realistic painting. It was more of a modern art school. And so I started going to, at that point, it was called the Gage Academy, I think, which then became the Realist Academy of Art in Seattle, which later Juliet Aristides took over. So I started taking evening and weekend classes there to get more of a traditional training. And it was there that I met some people that told me about Jacob's studio in New York. And when I first heard about Jacob's studio, I was like, what, a school that's not accredited? This guy, he just has people over at his house, what? So I flew out to New York. When I graduated college, I flew out to New York to look at the, my mind's totally blanking.
NY, New York Academy.
New York Academy of Art,
Yeah.
Thank you. And I was like, and I'll stop by this guy, Jacob's house, our studio and see what this is all about. And I went to the New York Academy and, there were some incredible painters there teaching. But the classes, there wasn't a lot of model time. And the classes were still really conceptual. I still wanted to learn how to paint. My level was like, I am going to be as good as the old masters. So who can get me there? And I just didn't feel like it was a technique heavy school. And then I walked into Jake's, and I walked in on a Sunday night when classes weren't even open. And it was like crowded with students there hanging out, working on their drawings. And it was clear that it was because this is what they loved. And I walked in and it was like drawing after drawing after painting, where the level was like out of this world. And I just had one of those experiences that was like out of body. And I was like, I'm home.
Here it is. Yeah.
These are my people.
Yeah.
I'm home. There's nothing that can stop me from coming here.
Mm-hmm.
So I called Jake, had my interview, got in and, went through the program. He asked me to teach. After I finished, I started teaching at the Grand Central Academy when the school opened up, and I met you.
Yeah, that's so funny. There's a lot of overlap in the story, I think, between a lot of, I think, artists in the last 20, 30 years in which there's this need for or hope to learn how to draw and paint, but then going to a college and realizing I didn't learn how to do that thing.
Yeah.
I remember when I went to Mass Art in Boston, I wanted to do almost like Nona Rockwell kind of stuff because that's what I grew up with, and it was on the wall, which is tied to the old masters to a degree. And there was just none of it. It was just kind of like, it was like, go paint and you'll figure it out kind of thing, rather than can you demonstrate how it's done?
Yeah.
And I remember when I walked in, it was almost the same. It sounds like feeling you had when we walked in. I walked in Water Street, and I just knew right away. There was that connection back to the French academics, in which I used to look at Jerome paintings and go how did anyone do this? Or Bouguereau or something like that.
Yeah.
And nobody was talking about them in school. They even in the historical side kind of jump over it. And I was like, well, what about that? That's kind of, we've jumped over into abstract expressionism, impressionism, abstract expressionism. But that same feeling when I walked through Water Street that time, and I was just like, holy crap, this is it. Walking into the back, I was at 69th Street. Is that where you were? Or were you actually on Water Street in Brooklyn?
I interviewed at Water Street, started at 69th.
Okay. Yeah, so you must have been the first kind of, I guess, class, even though it's not like a graduating class that started over there.
Yeah.
Yeah, so probably similar experience, walked through the model room, and then his studio was in the back.
Yeah.
And I just remember that long walk and seeing 12 students around on easels and being like, holy crap, they're all amazing. And if I was the worst one in here, it would still be like...
Which I was when I started.
Well, I think we all are, right? But it'd be like light years away from, even the best one at a college.
Yeah.
So why don't you walk us through the experience you had at Water Street? It's kind of 4 years, right? It's kind of loosely 4 years.
Yeah. I mean, those are some of the best years of my life, I would say. I mean, it was just incredible. One thing I loved it was there was about 12 to 15 of us. It was still really small at that point. And even though I was a new student working on cast drawing, I was right next to people working on the figure, more advanced students that were.
You could say names too, by the way.
Okay.
To me, it's like when I tell the stories, I think they get even more rich when I'm like, Colleen, Barry, and Justin were next to me, and Danny, Grant, and and you used to come in, and you were like but anyway, who are some of the ones that were there that were like you were next to that you're like, holy crap, these people are really good?
Yeah. That's a really good question. Well, the other thing I will say was Jake painted every day.
Yeah.
You
were there for the figure show, the monster figure show.
That's right. So Jake was there painting every day, and my cast drawing was set up right behind him. Mike Klein and I started at the same day, and awesome. We had this beautiful competitive friendship where at one point, Jacob took a break from actually teaching me, and all he would have to do was stand behind me and say, oh wow, that's really interesting that you're not getting this aspect, because Mike Klein really has it.
You knew how to
and
fire
I was
you
just
up.
like, okay, 2 days I'm getting, I'm giving myself 2 days, but I'm gonna get it.
Yeah.
But it was great. It was really small. Everyone was so for each other.
Yeah. Healthy competitive.
Healthy. Nick Reynolds was one of the older students, and the older students at that point weren't officially teaching, but organically they were always coming to help us. always. And it was an open, like, ask me anything, you know? If I'm busy, I won't come over. If I can spare 5 minutes, I will, you know, do anything to explain this to you.
Yeah.
And it was a real, like, love and affection for each other. We were sort of felt like, you know, rebels of the art world in a way, because we weren't mainstream and we were off doing this crazy thing, you know, trying to do classical painting again. That wasn't.
You could go to that school over there, right? Or you could come here and it's like in somebody's, you know, carriage house.
Yeah.
Or
Right.
garage.
That's right. That's right. Yeah. And Nick Hiltner was another fellow student at that time. He was a little after me, and Sam Wisniewski.
Yeah.
And so it was just like deep friendships.
Yeah.
You know, we didn't know how we were going to make it in the art world. You know, half of us, you know, we were just surviving in New York City in crappy apartments, you know, like living hand to mouth, you know, and with big dreams of becoming, you know, great painters.
Yeah, that's awesome. And the interesting kind of dynamic, as you're saying, was that, like, you know, you learn so much just from being with all these other artists, which have just, like, you don't want to be the worst, right? So you're like, I gotta get really good.
Right.
One of the things that got me too was, like, I would go in and there'd already be people there, and when I was leaving, they didn't leave. And then on the weekends, they would try to get in there too. Yeah. So it ended up being like this revolving studio where people working on projects, they were working on the cast, they were working on the figure in the afternoons. But then also for us, we had a couple artists come back, like you came back and Sam were the ones. So I was like, I think you had just left in 2007 or 6, and then I came in 2007.
Yeah.
So you were now
newbie.
Yeah, you were the one to, like, come in and once I got into Water Street, you were the one to come in, I think, on Tuesdays, and then work with us in the morning. Yeah, that was awesome.
It was incredible.
But you also have, I think, you know, there's more stories when you were in there too. You're working on figure. Weren't you kind of like helping Jacob sometimes, like doing some of his underpaintings? Is that correct?
Yeah. He.
I don't know if we're supposed to say this.
No. I think it's fine that he hired me to work on commissions, because often he would be painting for a huge show.
Yeah.
Right? And then he would also have these portrait commissions coming in. And his paintings for his show were like his own pieces, his own vision, and the portrait commissions were, you know, I mean, I don't want to speak about his experience between painting his own works and portrait commissions.
But you were more like the preparatory work.
Yeah.
The preside, the abolish,
right.
things
but
like
he
that.
had this cool system where he would actually, so the people would come in, they would sit. He would do the preliminary, he would do like a color, like almost one of those, you know, 3 or 4 portrait sketches in color, completed.
Yeah.
Right? So he would have that. And then I would and then he would map out where he wanted the face on the larger finished piece.
Right.
And I would copy his little painting almost as an underpainting, try to match onto the big painting. And then he would come in, the sitter would sit, and he would do the final touches.
So you're more, almost like the classic atelier, like Rembrandt's atelier, right?
Yeah.
It's like you were the ones, the early students would come in and work on the easier stuff, which is still not easy, but it's like setting him up to be able to do what he did. He did all the hard work.
Yeah.
Even though it's all hard, I'm not taking that away, but it's like he saw that you were skilled and really good at this thing, and he was like, you could help me and speed up the process a little bit because there's only one of him, and then you would do the underpaintings and stuff like that.
Yeah.
That's pretty amazing. Like, I remember when you told me that, I was like,
it was
holy
terrifying.
crap.
It was terrifying. I mean, I think he would have me stretch his canvases for him. I didn't know how to stretch a big, you know, so I'm in there like all day trying to, making all the mistakes in the world. And
Yeah.
yeah.
But you were close with the family. You know, you used to, I think, babysit for the kids, and you know, so the beautiful thing about that is that you become part of like the world in which you see Jacob, and you're in there, you're in his house, he's upstairs sometimes, and you're downstairs in almost a garage or carriage house. So it becomes much more than like a school. It's like it's a family.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. He has an incredible family. His children are amazing. His wife is one of the most beautiful, intelligent, nurturing people I've ever met. You know, I have so much love and respect for them. You know, Jacob too, he's like an example of somebody who's passionate about something and takes it all the way in their lifetime. And you know, all the people that he's brought along with him, all the people, not just that he's taught classical painting to, but he's provided like a kind of living passion, a place where people can come together, you know.
Yeah, totally. He's done a lot, and he's had a huge influence on a lot of people, and I think that's where the inspiration came from. I think he was teaching at New York Academy of Art, and then a lot of people wanted to learn more of what he was doing, which is that Titsef Jacobs.
Oh, yeah.
And I think he started it in about 2000. I don't know if I'm accurate with the numbers, and that's where it's like, it seems like organically it kind of worked into his studio, and then it broadened out, and then I think there was the realization that so many people were looking for this, and then Water Street was too small, and then grew into Grand Central, which I think is what it is now.
Yeah.
So who are some of the ones that used to come around? Was Travis there at the time?
Yeah, Travis would come by. He sort of ended right as I was beginning.
So it's kind of similar story.
Yeah, and Kate Lehman.
Yeah.
And both of them were my heroes. Whenever they'd stop by to see Jacob, I would like grab my, drawing or painting, and I would ask for them to critique and help me. And Michael Grimaldi came and taught, also huge hero.
Yeah.
The way he talks about the body and gesture and movement. And Dan Thompson taught, and who's the guy in not Arizona or Tucson?
Oh, Tony Ryder.
Tony Ryder, who had been a huge hero of mine since college, since I was like 16 years old, before I even knew about Jake.
Yeah.
Tony Ryder came, and I was like so starstruck when I got to sit next to him and he was critiquing my drawing.
Yeah, he's so nice too.
Oh.
I was able to go out in 2000. It was 18, right before my daughter was born. We kind of, me, Rodney, and Kevin, all got together and did this thing where we're like, we're going to do a workshop, and we flew out, and I met him, and I was starstruck. But his wife, Celeste, I was like, she's equally as good, but she's super quiet.
Uh-huh.
And just a gentle and beautiful humans. I was like,
happy they found each other.
I know, but I was like, how come people don't know about Celeste? And that's one of the reasons why I was like, when I started writing Art Still Life, I was like, I got to put her in the book. Tony's in there. Of course I want Tony in the book. You can put your heroes in these things.
Yeah.
But then, someone's going to bring her to the light.
Yes.
And her work's phenomenal.
Yeah. It's two separate things. It's like, someone can be an incredible painter, right? And then there's, marketing yourself and your work. Yeah. And they're not both for everyone. Yeah. Some people are very skilled at marketing themselves and their paintings are meh, right? Yeah. And vice versa. And it's okay too. Like some people not everybody wants to be in the spotlight and all the strange pressures and circumstances that come with that. Some people want to live a happy, quiet life making work that they love.
That's amazing. There's so much good art and teachers everywhere. And I think that's this revolution of the ateliers coming back. Awesome. So then, you graduate, then you go into the teaching side of it. You're at GCA. You're kind of at GCA and Water Street at the same time. That's where we met. I was doing the cast with you at night. You'd come over on Tuesdays at the Water Street. And Sam, I think, came on Thursdays for the figure in the afternoon.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember my story always starts with you, where Jacob was like, go do this thing, and I had come from animation, so my drawings were super fast. Jacob was totally unimpressed by everything I showed him, which is why he was like, go do a cast drawing. I don't know.
I don't think he was not impressed.
Well, that's how he plays it, right?
Right, that's how he plays it,
Yeah. So I went over, and I remember going in, I think it was like Bob was like the first one at the door.
Yeah.
And I always tell it as a story of like, almost like in Moby Dick, where they're on the dock, and now the world is presenting itself. You're on your blissful journey, right? It's kind of like this idea that like there's a person that's been on the journey, and that's the first thing you see. So he greeted me, and I was like, hey, what's up? Like, how long does it take you guys to do these paintings or these drawings? And he was like, 3 months. And I was like, 3 months to do like one cast drawing?
Yeah.
Because from the animation side, I was doing these 20-minute drawings.
Right.
Everything. And it was total mind-blowing of like, how can I wrap my head around that? And I remember just being like, you're my spiritual guide through this.
Yes.
Tell me what I need to do.
Mm-hmm.
And I put it in your hands and be like, just, if I go too fast, just slow me down.
Yeah.
I remember the thing that I still put on my syllabus, which you put on yours, is patience.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So talk to me about that. You were the cast drawer or the cast, I don't know, leader?
Cast hall maven.
Yeah, there you go. Cast hall maven for a couple of years there, right?
Yes. Is that what you're asking about? What that was like?
Yeah, like you're now in the teacher role, and they put you in, you were placed in this, and I think it seemed to be like the perfect place for you to be like, learn patience,
Yeah. Yes, I loved the cast hall because because of the students, really. This kind of training attracts people who are desperate and yearning and beyond passionate, right? Beyond passionate and like so hungry. And that kind of energy is so feeding to be around.
Yeah.
And there's also, people they come in frustrated because they want to be able to do something and they can't, and it's like the most important thing for them and they can, and it's so frustrating, right? And artists can be very fragile. And so I loved being the introductory figure to help them get just the foundational principles.
Yeah.
What does turning form mean?
Yeah.
What does remembering my light source mean? How do I put that into action, right? How do I do a block-in?
Yeah.
I loved being sort of this nurturing, motherly figure and helping people transition in. And it was, a lot of people have just moved to New York City. They're figuring out the subway system. They're figuring out their finances. It's like a thing. And I loved being the introductory person to like welcome them into the program, give them the schools they need, and like kind of keep an eye on their psychological, impressions. And
I think like the way you speak, just the like calmness that you bring to it was like the perfect like introductory into the program, and it definitely helped me. I remember just being able to like slow way down, and used to make fun of me. I don't know if you remember that, but I used to write everything down. Yeah. And I think I used to blog at the time.
Your notebooks.
Yeah, and you'd be like, why don't you blog that? Remember that?
Yeah. Put that in your blog.
Yeah, why don't you blog that?
But yes, and I mean, thank goodness for all those notebooks because you've been able to write how many books now?
I say it all the
With
time,
the
like,
notes?
the beautiful thing for all that is that I can refer back to it, and I can kind of hear you in the way that in which I wrote it too, of like, there's always like our past teachers that are kind of on our shoulders, and you're always there as like, be patient, all different things at different times. I always say the light and airy thing about your shadows, and people are like, what the heck does that mean?
Yeah.
And I have to explain it. I'm like, it's just Camie in my ear all the time, kind of saying things. All right, so I think it was 2007. Jacob created the Hudson River Fellowship, right?
Yes.
And
School of Landscape Painting.
That's right. And he did it with Travis, I think, and Nick Hiltner and Ted Minoff, right?
Yeah.
The four of them were kind of and I remember at the time everyone in the atelier was able to go, and I think you were all invited, Sam was invited, you were invited, all the instructors. And what's funny is I wasn't invited because I joined the atelier so late. I had started, I think it was like April 2007, and in May or June is when they were going up. And he was like, well, I'm not sure you can go. You came in late and people applied for the thing.
Yeah.
He had a change of heart. At the end, he was like, yeah, you can totally go.
Yeah.
So you needed to get up there. And I remember I was like, well, I can drive you.
Yeah.
And that was kind of like, to me, the start of our friendship.
Yes.
Where I think before then we were kind of like, you wrote my recommendation letter to get into Water Street. We had communicated when I saw you at Water Street. But then it was in passing or something where you're like, I don't know how to even get there. And I was like, well, I got to drive up. Because I was driving back to New York, I think on the weekends.
Oh, right.
To work at a restaurant.
That's right.
And then I would teach there. I would work there, and then I'd drive you back up, and that's when we just goofed off, I think, for 2.5 hours and really got to know each other. You remember that?
I do. We would end up in bars. We
did.
Played golf.
That's right.
We
I
went
remember
to the
that.
driving range.
Yeah. And I think part of it was, I think that was like the second time up there because we realized like this was a 3-week adventure.
Yeah.
We were coming back on the weekends, and we had agreed to do it, but we weren't landscape painters.
No.
So we were just kind of like, do you want to do something else before we get there? And it was like, kind of like the writing is like, you're not a landscape painter.
Right.
But yeah, I do remember we hit a bar once before. And then we did go miniature golfing.
Yeah. I mean, we talked about painting constantly.
We definitely did. You did a couple paintings, right? You did a couple tree studies.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. It was a great trip.
Yeah, I mean, it was incredible.
Yeah, I just think for me, I was like, I don't know what I'm doing out here.
I just want people. I just want to paint people.
Yeah. So then after that, that's kind of, I remember we would drive back and forth, and I was like, Camie's such an awesome person. You still are, of course. And then I was like, would you want to hire models? Or maybe one of us brought it up.
Oh,
remember
that's
that?
Right. Yes.
And then that fall, when we went back into Water Street, I came by, it was like every Tuesday or Wednesday.
Yeah.
You and I would hire a model in your studio apartment in the Upper East Side.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right. And then we had some more artists come over.
Yeah, I think at the time Nancy had just joined Water Street, and Travis was her husband, and they had both gone to the John Angel Academy, I think.
Yep.
And Travis and Nancy, we met at the landscape trip too. There's a lot of links to that.
Yeah.
And then Nancy, I think, was working on commissions at night, and Travis didn't.
Well, and she was going to Water Street all day long. Yeah.
And I think Travis was looking for like somebody to share a model with, so we invited him in.
Yeah.
And then we invited Greg Mortensen.
Yeah.
And the four of us in this tiny space. Remember that?
My studio apartment.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we kind of like sit almost like in this tiny little room and hire a model.
Yeah.
And two of us, I think, would be sitting on your bed. That's how small it was.
I know.
But it was awesome because
so
we joke around and Such a good time. Anything you want to add to that?
Well, I just, I think it's really beautiful that we were young artists
Mhm.
who hoped to have professional careers one day, who hoped to have great skill and do meaningful works of art. And then magically, here we are, so many years later.
I think you were just starting to like gain traction. Like you've
Yeah.
done these beautiful works, and I was just like, I just want to do what you're doing, and you, I think, were painting. You were in like you had a couple of paintings in Arcadia at the time. Remember that?
Yeah.
So I think you were doing that.
Just starting to show in galleries. Just starting.
Yeah. So it was like super helpful, I think, for us. Where Travis was kind of closer to you, Travis Seymour.
Yeah.
And then me and Greg were about the same time at, he was at Grand Central, I was at Water Street.
Yeah.
And it was like the four of us got together, goofed off the whole time.
Yeah.
But kind of watched you as like the senior artist getting into the galleries and stuff.
Mm.
But there's so much good discussion that came out of that all the time.
Yeah.
Such an awesome time.
Fun. Yeah, it was so fun. Yeah.
So then after that, your career is starting to take off. You had the show, not like a solo show, but you were in like a group show at Arcadia.
Mm-hmm.
You were teaching at Grand Central during the day and also at Water Street. Then eventually, I think it was like 2009, you started the Guild,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
Was it 9 or 2010?
I have no idea.
Somewhere around there.
I don't know. My son's 11 now.
Gotta do math.
Yeah. I got pregnant with him that year. I don't know. Somewhere.
So you moved the school to Brooklyn.
Mhm.
You're like, I'm gonna do it myself. We were
Mhm.
friends. I was a piece of it as well. I think I was gonna do
That's
the night
right.
class.
Yeah.
So we go out and then you get a big space, especially
Yeah.
compared to where we were in the Upper East Side.
Yeah.
And it was short-lived,
Yeah.
mostly because, Emerson.
Yeah, I got pregnant.
So that's also when you met Ken as well, right?
Well, no, I had met
Of course,
Ken.
before that.
Right.
Yeah.
But yes, that's right. That's right. We met on the streets of New York. And
Is he doing magic?
No, we were like both, I don't even, like doing some errand. We ran into each other.
Yeah.
And within 2 minutes of the conversation, discovered we were both single.
Yeah.
And then there was this silence, and he was like, "You want to go out?" I was like, "Yeah." We went out
That's
and
awesome.
basically decided that night that we were going to spend the rest of our lives together.
That's awesome. And you have so much overlap too, like the passion for poetry and the way in which you kind of tackle or come into painting with that. I love it. And Ken, of course, is a good friend too. And I love seeing both of you guys. So 2009, 2010, we don't have to do the math. We open the Guild. I'm doing the night classes. That's when like Kevin moves out. Kevin Weesty,
Yes.
Irvin Rodriguez came out, Rodney Davis,
yeah.
and we had that fun core of day and night. And you had the day, I kind of had the night, and I'd pop in every once in a while, I think, and paint with you guys, where I was trying to put it all together because I was kind of finishing at Grand Central at the time, so it merged into one school.
Yep.
And then you got pregnant with Emerson.
Yep.
So we closed the school.
Mm-hmm.
Emerson's born.
Yep.
You and Ken get married.
Yep.
I think, and then you move up here to the Hudson Valley.
Yep.
Right? And now you're obviously still here. So then, married to Ken, here we are, 2023.
Yeah.
And you're doing this beautiful allegorical work. So where can you take the audience with kind of where you are with all that?
Well, if we back up a little bit and back into the cast hall, that was my, teaching the principles of drawing and painting is amazing, right? Because you have to meet the student where they are, and you have to understand how they learn.
Mm-hmm.
And everyone learns a little different. So in teaching cast drawing, I started looking around at all these casts, and we had an extraordinary collection
They were further back.
on loan from the Metropolitan Museum. And I was like, who are these people?
Yeah.
Who are these gods? And why is this such an important part of the training? And then opened the world of Greek mythology, then opened the world of world mythology.
Yeah.
And because I had a certain amount of foundational principles under my belt,
Mm-hmm.
I then remembered why I got into painting in the first place.
Yeah.
Which is storytelling.
Yeah.
What does it mean to be human?
Yeah.
What does it mean to have a lifetime? What do all the things that happen in that lifetime mean? Life, death, love,
Mm-hmm.
children, ideas, feelings. And so that was so exciting because it was like, skills are great,
Mm-hmm.
right? But then when you use them for what you love to contemplate, then it's just like
Powerful.
Yeah. And so I opened my school, the Guild Atelier in Brooklyn, with the hopes of it being a school of narrative painting.
Yeah, I remember that.
Right? So I was going to both teach the fundamental principles of drawing and painting, but I was also going to talk about composition, storytelling, character development, geometry, symbolism.
Yep.
However, even though I had a lot of skills in drawing and painting technique, and I loved storytelling, I didn't have a lot of skills in storytelling and painting. It was more like I was at the beginning. I was back at the beginning of something now.
Yeah.
Now I want to learn how does one tell a great story in a painting? Because you have one scene, you have one moment. How do you create time in one image?
Yeah.
How do you actually create relationship between two characters? So you can feel the relationship between them. It's not just like one figure and another figure, How do you bring somebody alive? I didn't have any answers at that point, but I was really excited. And I tried to start teaching that, and my first year at my school, and I made a lot of mistakes. I brought in concepts too early, when students were just trying to learn form.
Yeah.
I was talking about things I didn't exactly know yet. I made a lot of mistakes, and I burnt out some of my students. But I mean, it's okay. I mean, it's all part of my journey. And then I had to close the school because I went on bed rest for my pregnancy, which was really devastating. But then having a children, having a family, and getting back into painting again, it was like actually living my life, not just as a painter, but now like I'm a mother.
Yeah.
And all of these questions I had about what does it mean to be human are so much more like they're now real in my life. What does it mean to be human? Because I have this tiny human, and apparently I'm responsible for them. And like, I don't know whose idea that was. Who thought that would be okay, but and so it was really lovely because I actually had a life. I had a life to paint about.
Yeah.
Whereas before, my life was painting.
Yeah, well, it's like the search for the meaning, and there's almost like you're learning how to play the instrument, but you don't really know what music you want to make. You just want to master it.
Right.
But there's
which is the right thing to do in your teens and 20s.
Yeah,
right?
and I
It's
remember
the right thing.
I remember we would talk about this with Travis too, because you would talk about with us almost like you wish there was like a 1 or 2 year program after the technical side of it
Yeah.
to then get into like, what do you want to do with it, and explore that. And
Yeah.
it sounds like we're kind of watching you explore that.
Yes.
So I remember you did Josh Fishbein, my roommate at the time.
Yes.
With
Petrushka.
yeah, and what was her name? She was an amazing model.
She was an amazing model.
Rosario.
Yes.
And the two of them together and that painting, and then you did the Narcissus painting, which is gorgeous, of John.
Yeah.
So you started to see this kind of birth of narrative painting coming out of your work too.
Yeah.
And by the way, there's nothing wrong with figuring out as you go.
That's
and teaching. You know, you're maybe
That's right.
1 or 2, I'd say a lot more steps even than that, than all of us. But you're planting the seed too of thought. And it's funny to hear you talk about it, because I'm like, so much of that is now where I am with it.
Yeah.
You know, like the narrative side of it.
Yeah.
And even in my bio, I say that, like, I'm more of like a narrative painter. And I think it ties back to like the Rockwell love and really like the work that I was seeing in like Jerome and stuff. That's awesome.
Yeah. Yeah.
So where are you today with it? I don't want to skip over anything in the middle, but that kind of brings you to like the deep meaning you were looking to find in your work, which you found through many different things.
Yeah. I will say one more thing, which is one thing that's really tricky about teaching narrative painting is, you know, when artists have a vision come to them or an idea, it's like that in a way is like sacred and untouchable.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's never the job of the teacher to be like, that's a good idea or that's a bad idea.
Yeah. Right?
And that's been part of the journey. I realized, like, how do you teach narrative painting? How do you teach storytelling, right? So one thing I've learned is you start with their idea or their vision. You try to have them, you know, the student describe what they mean or feel as much as possible. And then the teaching is, okay, so how do we get that onto the canvas, right? So it's still, you're still teaching only the fundamental principles of drawing and painting, right? But those principles are in service of their vision.
Yeah.
But it's never about even commenting really on their vision, unless you're going to say, I think that's great and wonderful.
Yeah.
You know? I
usually, my analogy that I use is, you know, I'm more of a guide, like a lighthouse. And it's just to say, watch out for the rocks. It's not to say don't come to shore here. It's just, you know, as you maneuver through these things, I'll help you guide you.
Yeah.
Rather than, and I remember you said some of that stuff to me early too, where, you know, I think you were trying to help me come to where I wanted to be with it, which I didn't know. And you were just like, I just want to help you get where you want to go.
Yeah.
I'm not trying to, not like you were saying this, but it's like, you're not trying to instill that I should do the same thing that you're doing.
Right.
It's like we can work together and guide each other many different ways. So.
Yeah. Absolutely.
I appreciated it.
Good.
Well, your work is gorgeous. So where are you today? You know, you've got this painting right behind you. Do you want to maybe talk us through kind of?
Yeah, this is a experiment. My studio mate, Will, and I wondered how far we could get in a narrative figure painting in 5 days.
Gotta love the challenge, right?
Yeah. In 5 days. And so, you know, we both got as far as we got, but it was exciting because, you know, normally in 5 days, you'd only book a model, you know, once or twice and you'd have like a drawing done, you know, but we had, you know, drawings, it transferred, he painted directly onto the canvas. Yeah. We had background. You have to what's great is you have to make all your decisions really fast.
Yeah. So
you don't have time to think about what is my composition. It's like, nope, just make a guess and go, put it down and go. Yeah. what is their relationship? What is the story? I don't know. I'm just doing it,
Mhm.
And we got way, way farther in 5 days than we would have otherwise. So that
That's
was
awesome.
really exciting.
And the beautiful thing is you can reflect on it too. It's kind of a new way to work, and
That's right.
artists love challenges, and it's
That's
like,
right.
I now have the skill set to kind of know what'll happen if I go this way. There are
Yeah.
pros and cons that come with it. So how did you work the narrative into it? Like as you were in it, obviously you set the two models, or was it you got each model individually?
We got each model individually. Will has been really interested in the mythology surrounding Dionysus lately. A lot of his themes are about that. And so we started there. And we set this whole scene up with like fruit and plants and wine and, almost like this crazy wild party in these two figures. And the model, Greer, is incredible. He got up there and immediately I saw him as Pan, which is connected to Dionysus, but they're two different mythological creatures. So then in between the actual painting, I started going through all my mythology books and studying about Pan. Who is he? What does he represent? What does he symbolize?
Mm-hmm.
And I happened upon this story of Pan and Psyche.
Mm-hmm.
And normally Pan is this wild, savage figure in the woods, chasing after nymphs and creating panic.
Mm-hmm.
But in this one story I read, Psyche, out of loss for her love, who's love, she's wandering the earth at this point, searching for love. She drowns herself in a river in the forest. Mm-hmm. And Pan finds her, pulls her out, saves her, and comforts her. Mm-hmm. And in this story, he wasn't the Pan that I knew. I was like, wow, this is like a
naughty
different
creature, yeah.
Right. And Psyche is like the psychology or the soul. She's a very high being. She's like represents the human soul. Mm-hmm. Whereas he represents like almost like earthly.
Savage.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So how could the sort of earthly, savage, wild part be comforting this pure, high psychological?
Yeah.
What is it that he's offering her, or feeding her with, or giving her that she didn't have before? So I was like, whoa, I'm in. So that's where the story took me. And so then I just tried to make decisions based on that. And, really the exciting part of painting for me now is asking these questions about, who is the wild, savage part, of humanity, of me, of us all, and what's the psyche, what's our psychology, and what does this story teach me about a human being's life?
Right.
And creating the painting is like is a study of that. And today, that's what painting is for me. And it's it's just this.
Yeah, it's a deep
so
dive.
Exciting. Yeah.
Yeah, and the beauty of it is that you're not talking about like, where's the light source, right? Or like, what's the skin color, or what's the palette? It's kind of like you've got a lot of that all worked out, and it becomes autopilot. Like you don't think about driving anymore.
Right.
We just get to the destination, right? And that's
and,
what all these technical things are for.
Yeah, and it's like, right. It's like I'm now creating his skin color and texture. It's not a matter of like a human skin color or texture.
It's what's your narrative. Exactly.
What texture would a being have who's wild and savage? And, that's the question.
Yeah.
And how do I make her skin be a representative of human psychology?
Right.
It's like those kind of questions.
Yeah.
And so, which are much more exciting to me.
Yeah.
Than like, we're where's my light source?
Yeah. Or like, is it,
Though it's
is
all
it
in
exactly
there.
what I see?
It's all in there. You know, I don't want to put down technique at all because it's the foundation.
Yeah, but it's not just a technical exercise on a canvas.
Right.
It's the technical to support the concept
That's right.
that you're trying to get it.
That's right.
Or, that's awesome.
And it's a journey filled with questions too. It's not like, oh, you know, this is the color I need to use. It's like playing now. Like, let me try this. Oh, that's
Right.
working. Ooh, that's not working.
But one of the things I say too, and I think it's from Michael Aviano, if you nail your values, you can commit crimes with color. You know, because value and drawing are like the two kind of like the most important things.
Right.
But once you get in there, then you're just like, well, I can push this color. And again, there's a deep emotional attachment to color. And what we're doing is we're kind of sculpting on canvas. So you're physically creating this thing with emotion, trying to be a part of it.
That's right. That's right.
Good quote, right?
Very, yeah, it is. It is. And then, and you can go back and create little petty crimes with some value and some drawing. If
Exactly.
You need
Yeah, and the crimes don't have to be, you know, they could be misdemeanors.
to. Yeah.
They're as big or small as you want to.
Felonies.
Well, I think that's where when you kind of look at art through that prism too, and you go, there is beauty in like abstract expressionism for that side, the expressive side of it, you know, fully expressive, taking out the technical. And we're somewhere towards like bridging the gap or somewhere in the middle, taking from pieces to do what we want. And, you know, they push color, the Falls do it a lot, you know, where you're just like, if something, maybe a hint of blue, they make it blue.
Right. Right.
That is a crime.
Right. And then there's the whole world of symbolism, which, oh my gosh, all the colors have symbolic meanings to all different cultures, civilizations around the world. And it's very exciting to not only find the differences, but the similarities, you know, and all the symbols and the meanings between all the different civilizations.
Yeah.
And, you know, the symbols in paintings bring out, like, they touch upon our basic human understanding. That's like outside of words, right? They like, you know.
Well, I think that's what we were chatting about earlier too, is that the words can only do this, right? And language has its boundaries, and picture making is separate from it, and there could be some overlap, but you know, we're trying to do something that words can't do, right? With one image, and
that's right.
Sometimes very, very difficult to do.
Yeah, like this relationship between them, you know, one of my questions is, how do I make it a raw, primal relationship that goes beyond sexual, that is like deep affection and understanding, both on the physical level, but the intellectual level, the emotional, you know, how do I create an emotional and intellectual and a spiritual connection between these two beings, and have them be naked sitting next to each other? You know?
Yeah. Like what I'd say is, like, obviously mythology is something that you're inspired by.
Yeah.
Are you actively reading all the time? Like
all
if somebody's interested in this, what would you say to do? How would you guide them?
I would say, well, you know, my relationship with mythology is not that it was written by a bunch of savages that believed in multi-gods. You know, the stories have so much meaning and so much symbolism that it's like a lifetime of exploration. And I'm really interested in the different mythologies that overlapped. And it's not for, you know, to become sort of smarter or more historically adept. It's like I believe mythology is written for the purpose of understanding the human psychology,
Meaning of life,
the meaning of life.
why we're here.
What is the human spirit?
Right.
What is the life force in human beings? What does that mean?
Right.
Is there a purpose? Are we just here without a purpose?
Mm-hmm.
You know, these are the questions I'm interested in. Even as unanswerable as they are, it's really exciting to me. So again, you know, the mythology or allegory or philosophy or even science. I've been doing paintings about the relationship between day and night, the sun, the earth, the atmosphere.
Mm-hmm.
To remember, my advice would be to remember why these questions are important to
Mm-hmm.
each individual.
Yeah.
Like, why is this important? Or accept that it is important, you
Mm-hmm.
know, but that, again, it's not about the thing, it's about my life and
Mm-hmm.
the time of my life and other people's lives, you know, that I care about. And you know, what does it all mean?
Yeah, I think it's great. Have you read Joseph Campbell at all?
Yes.
Oh, yeah, there you go.
Yes.
Yeah,
yes.
So he kind of takes it all and puts
Does.
it together and then connects the dots.
Yeah.
And I think what you're trying to say is just that there's a story and it can relate to anybody because
Mm-hmm.
there are the same truths that psychologically you're going to deal with, but there's something to get out of it, right?
That's right.
It's connected
That's
to
right.
everybody.
Yeah. Yeah. And I would also say that there's a whole bunch of difficulties about narrative painting. And that it's okay to make a lot of mistakes, right? Because, you know, one of the things I learned was if I'm trying to create an emotion, there's sort of like there's sincere emotion and there's insincere emotion, mm-hmm. right? In a figure. And I've made mistakes before where I've created paintings where the emotion was more like a one-off or something. Like think of sad and you think like, you know, but that doesn't portray like a deep human sadness, right? And I would say don't be afraid to make mistakes like that. Don't be afraid to make cheesy paintings sometimes, or like, you know, it's a fine line and you have to walk it and you have to push yourself and you have to explore and you have to create a few duds, you know, and you don't get there unless you learn like, wow, what is that line? You know, if I go too far, it's a Hallmark card. Yeah. So what does it mean to rein it in, mm-hmm. and like make it more like an internalized, you know, sacred emotion rather than you know, it's really interesting, but you know, just go for it. Say go for it. Yeah. You know, go for it. Paint what you love. Research what you love. Be all in. Yeah, you'll make mistakes. Yeah, you'll make a couple of crappy paintings. It's okay. Yeah, don't be afraid to make mistakes. That's right. But that's great, and especially with kids too. You know what like sincere emotion is. Some, you know, they're always, not always, but a lot of the times trying to fake it. Yeah, and it's like, yeah, there's a sincerity that children do have, mm-hmm. right? That adults lose a little bit. Yeah. So actually watching them is a good lesson. You want to see someone who's like destroyed over losing or breaking a toy. Yeah. You know, unapologetically destroy, you know? Yeah. It's like. Awesome. Yeah, a lot of lessons, of course, with kids. And, you know, I've learned so much just from having my daughter around and just observing her every day. It's pretty awesome. Yeah. Thanks so much. Well, look, thanks for taking the time. Beautiful paintings, as always. Where can people find you? You're on Instagram. Are you on Facebook? Yeah. Not really. Not really. Website? I do.
CamieSalaz.com.
Yeah. I'm sort of old-fashioned. I mean, call me or show up at my studio.
Yeah. And you're in Ossining, and
yeah.
You're okay if we plug that, right? Put that in there.
Definitely.
And if anyone's interested in learning narrative painting, call you.
Yeah, my phone number's on the website. Just call me.
Be careful with that. You may want to take it off.
Oh, okay.
Just kidding.
No, I've never had a problem.
All right. Well, look, thanks for having me in your studio.
Thanks for
Always
coming,
enjoy to be
Todd.
here. Yeah, we'll have to get together and we'll paint soon.
Definitely.
All right. Thanks, Cam.
Okay. Yeah.